All right. Welcome everybody to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It's Wednesday, January 14th. And we're continuing our testimony on H 527, which is an act relating to extending the sunset of 30 VSA Section 248A. I'm Representative Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 District.
I'm Scott Campbell from St. John's Parish. Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Darren Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Klepner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 2.
Great. And in the room today.
Hello, I'm Kim Landona with the Vermont Chamber.
Great.
Claire Buckley with Leonine Public Affairs for CTIA.
Chris Rice from MMR here for Verizon.
Charlotte May, intern.
Great.
Dan Reed Perry, Nebraska.
Hunter Thompson, Director of Telecommunications for the Public Service Department.
I'm Greg Faber, work with the PUC.
Super. Thanks, everybody. All right. Greg, I think you're up. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Well, morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Greg Faber, work with the PUC. Here to talk about 527, but I can give some overview of 248A
That'd be great.
first, if you'd like that. Yeah.
Yep. We walked through the actual statute yesterday, but I'd love to hear more about how the PUC, how the process works.
How it works, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so full disclosure, part of my job at the PUC is to process all of these 248A applications. Typically we get about 140 applications a year. This year we're getting more, but I'll go into more detail on that as to why when I get to the bill part. But so in general, 248A was created back in 2007 to allow for statewide level review for the siting of wireless telecommunication facilities. The reason that was done, but prior to that, it was all done at the town level and Act 250 level. It makes sense to do it at a state level because these projects have statewide benefits. They also have multi-state wide benefits. So you don't want to look at it from a town by town perspective. It makes sense to do it at a state level review. This 248 sets forth the requirements for the applications and allows the PUC to develop rules or orders governing the process. And we have orders in place that govern the application process, what you need to file, when you need to file it, how much notice to give, when folks can file comments, when they can request hearings, things like that. Prior to 248A, all facilities needed Act 250 town approval. Section 248A is optional, meaning that is the option to go to the town and through Act 250 is still available to any provider. However, nobody uses that anymore. It's much simpler to go through the statewide level review because it's one-stop shopping. You're going right to the state.
And faster, simpler and faster.
Yes,
Yeah.
the 248A is an expedited review
Yeah,
process.
okay.
It was designed to be expedited because we were not seeing the development that the state wanted back prior to 2007. Let's see. So it stands theaters. So 248A, it's divided into three categories basically, and I know Ellen went through a little bit of this. So you got small projects or de minimis modifications, as they're called in the statute. These are typically swapping out antennas on an existing tower or maybe a farm silo. If you've all seen the antennas on farm silos, basically what they'll do is they'll take out 3 older antennas and put in 3 new antennas, and that's a de minimis modification. Those are fairly simple. The only thing you can complain about in those applications is whether it qualifies as a de minimis modification. So the square footage you're adding to a tower or a silo has to be 75 square feet or less. So it has to be pretty small. So those are your small projects, and those are the majority of the 140 projects a year that we see. The vast majority are de minimis modifications, the swapping out of antennas. The next size up is medium or limited size and scope, as it's called in the statute. Now that allows you to build a new tower up to 140 feet with a limited amount of earth disturbance surrounding the tower or a road going to that tower.
140.
140 feet tall. It would also encompass enlarging an existing compound to put in a new equipment base, or maybe you're putting in a generator and some equipment cabinets, and you might be engaging in enlarging an existing facility, so it would allow you to do that as well. And then you have large projects. So that would be a tower taller than 140 feet or more earth disturbance, more than 10,000 square feet of earth disturbance. So those are your three basic categories. And as I said, vast majority, 90% are de minimis modifications. See a lot of those. So notice for medium and large projects, not for de minimis, you have to provide 60 days, the provider has to provide 60 days advance notice of the application to the town, the adjoining landowners, the regional planning commission, all the state agencies, A&R, DHP, the Department of Public Service. So you provide your 60 days notice prior to filing the application. Once the application is filed, everybody has 30 days to file comments on that application. And in those comments, you can request hearings. You can file motions to intervene in a case. And then once that's done, then the process begins.
Rep. Sibilia?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, just want to go back a second, Greg. So most of these are replacements.
De minimis, yes.
Yeah, de minimis replacements. So for new towers,
Mhm.
who are those applications from? Are they from?
Where are they
like-
from?
Yeah, so is it like a tower company, or are these from the cellular companies themselves typically?
They are mostly from the cellular companies. However, the cellular companies do have their own tower companies as subsidiaries. Yeah,
Do you have
but
any speculative towers being
we
put up?
well, okay, so we do have this one company that they do provide a service. They are a service provider. However, the service is not cellular telephone. It is mobile radio communication. So think about truckers who are using their radios in their trucks. They can use this service. First responders can use the service. So it's not Verizon or AT&T. It's a different kind of service, and they put up their own towers. Now, part of their business plan is to put up that tower with their equipment, which is pretty small. It's just antennas, usually whip antennas.
Mhm.
And they will put up the tower in anticipation of getting AT&T and or Verizon to co-locate on that tower.
Mhm.
That's where the speculation comes in. So they're not completely spec towers because you can't do that under 248A. You have to be providing telecommunications services. And that mobile radio service
Mhm.
qualifies as a telecommunications service under 248A.
But they're building something that's larger than what their needs are for.
They wouldn't put it that way, but yes.
And the commission has no way of differentiating between.
Because they are providing a telecommunications service as defined under 248A, it is legal for them to apply. Yes. Now, that doesn't mean that someone could object to that tower, and we would have a hearing
Mhm.
as to whether the public good is served by that tower. So that's what you're hearing in the realm of speculative towers. So,
Yeah.
however, the vast majority are built by the big three telecom providers. They use their own companies to do the actual construction work because AT&T really isn't in the construction business. They're in the provision business. So, but that's pretty normal. They'll come in with a joint application.
So I'm sure you're aware that there's some consternation out in the world.
I've heard some of that, yeah.
Is there any connection to whether or not these are those types of towers or more or towers that are? Is there a connection?
Between
Those types of towers, which
Yes.
are the radio
mobile radio service.
radio,
Yeah.
versus the cell towers.
Is there a connection?
Yeah, with the consternation. So is it one or the other? type?
Oh, no, people get just as upset with a Verizon tower in my experience. It depends where it is.
Thanks.
I had a tower last week. 140-foot tower built into town. Not a single public comment, nothing. It went right through. I have another one filed the week before that. I have, 10 people in the town filing motions to intervene, the town filing something, the regional planning commission filing something. So
Okay,
it really depends on where it's located.
it's not.
It's not provider driven. No.
Thanks for indulging me, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So to talk about notice, there's no advance notice for de minimis modifications, because they are small. That makes sense. Let's see.
I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
Before, are there sort of legacy towers that were developed by private individuals that are on spec or whatever, but that are sort of another category of towers besides ones built by cell companies and mobile radio companies? Is that
Maybe there's a couple out there, private ones
okay?
that were built before any regulation.
Yeah,
There's
I
a
guess that's
couple.
what- Yeah,
And sometimes people come in to put stuff on those old towers.
Yeah.
And I'll see that.
and they can, and if they add to those towers, that would be a.
Then they have to go through us.
Under
Yes.
these 248A
That's right.
categories as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's some people who just have a wooden pole.
Yeah.
And they'll stick some antennas on it, and it's been there for 50 years.
Yeah.
Wooden pole out in the woods somewhere,
Yeah.
and someone will come and put antennas on it. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I was
see
talking to a guy who developed the tower. He said, and I was surprised. I didn't know that was something that people had done.
there's a couple.
Okay.
So the towers that existed on top of Mount Mansfield and Vico, that the power company had back, I guess, the 50s. If somebody wants to add a antenna to that, do they have to go through the 248 process? Or they have to go through a 248, 250 process to add additional antennas to existing towers?
That's correct. Yeah. They'll typically come to us for that project.
So you don't see, if somebody only goes 250, you don't see it at all?
Oh, I wouldn't know.
No.
My understanding is that all of them go through 248A now. So let's see, this is the information required for the application. For non-de minimis projects, we require applicants to provide information on existing permits, a detailed project description with site plans, elevation drawings, signal coverage maps. They have to show consistency with all applicable environmental and aesthetic criteria. This is basically all the Act 250 criteria. That applies to telecom siting as well. And they have to show consistency with the town and regional plans, and they have to show that they couldn't co-locate it on another tower, another nearby tower, and why. De minimis, it's a little different. All they got to do is file a site plan and show that the project qualifies as de minimis. So they have to show that it really is small. Let's see. And then for issuance of a decision, and this is interesting. So this is not in any other siting statute. So for projects of limited size and scope, we have to issue, the PUC has to issue a final decision within 60 days if there are no significant issues. And that includes the comment period. So you got a 30-day comment period. That means we only have 30 days to issue a decision, provided there's no significant issues. If there is a significant issue, we have another 60 days or 90 days from when the application is filed. So that gives us 60 days from the comment period. Now, I can tell you from my experience that if an evidentiary hearing is initiated within that, after that 30-day period, 60 days does not cover it. We blow by those deadlines every time there's an evidentiary hearing. And there's a 60-day and a 180-day for the larger projects too, but hearings take a long time, probably closer to a year than 60 days in order to give folks due process. You often have pro se litigants, you have the town, you have all the agencies. The department typically wants to do, the Department of Public Service typically wants to do an aesthetic analysis that takes time. That could take a few months to do that alone. And that's typically the big issue in these cases. It's all about aesthetics. So those timelines are, they're problematic in some cases, but so that's basically 248A.
But the timelines you said, and we learned yesterday, those are federally mandated, so there's nothing.
No.
We're not
we were talking
changing
about
them.
the shot clock thing.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's no. These are in statute.
Oh, okay.
You guys put these in the statute, so I don't worry about the shot clock. It's red herring.
Can you just,
Explain it?
yeah.
Oh boy.
So we
Okay.
did have that come in yesterday. The difference between what's in statute and the federal law.
Okay, so the providers like to trot out this argument from time to time. Pretty much in every case, they'll trot it out. There's a decision from the FCC in a case where a town zoning commission did not. So most states regulate these on the town level or the municipal level. In one case, a provider applied to do some to put some equipment on a tower. A zoning board did not take any action on that application for a very long time, probably a year. The provider then went to the FCC and said, "Hey, this is not right. There's a prohibition on towns prohibiting cell towers in a town. The towns are not allowed to blanket prohibit the provision of cell or the construction of cell towers in town, and this violates that prohibition." FCC said, "You're right. They need to take action within a reasonable time, and that reasonable time is like 150 days." Now, in our case, when we get a 248A application, we take immediate action. We issue an order saying the application is complete. We set up the comment deadlines. So we are taking actions in those cases. So I would argue that the shot clock argument it doesn't apply. They would argue differently, of course, but that's your shot clock argument right there. But there are statutory deadlines, the 60 days, the 90 days, and the 180 days. That's all in the statute. And we typically go by those in the case of an evidentiary hearing, and there's nothing really we can do about it. If we sped it up any faster, we do leave out things like site visits and public hearings because the time is so compressed. But if we went faster than that, I'm afraid we would be violating folks' due process rights. So it puts us in a difficult situation.
So are there any sanctions, any penalties?
There are. Thankfully, there are not.
Not following those deadlines. So it sounded like what you said a minute ago is some of these things can drag on for a year. It's not that you're not doing anything. It's just that what you're doing takes a long time.
It takes a long time, and the providers are not happy about that.
Right.
I get that. They point to the statutory deadlines. They point to the shot clock argument.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to run a case and give folks due process.
Right.
And squeeze it that much. You just can't do it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
So that's the process anyway. Yep.
Okay.
I just wanted to note that the PUC provides us with a performance metric report every year that details of, you know, how many cases, what, and how they're doing with their goals. And we should probably post it.
Can you send the link?
I sent it
When?
yesterday.
Okay. Makes sense.
But I'm just curious if you can answer it. How would you compare the due process of Act 250 versus 248A? Like, are the timelines more generous so that there can be more public? More
Active 50, I'm
or-
not an expert in active
So,
50.
okay, so you can't.
I'm sorry, I can't.
Thanks, Rector. I found it in my inbox and I'm sending it to Alex to post. Yeah,
When you're looking at these projects, do you look at radiation output from the towers?
That's a good question. Because a lot of people are upset about radio frequency emissions from the towers. Now, there again, you're running into federal preemption. The federal government preempts us from making decisions related to energy frequency or radio frequency emissions. They set the guidelines for the radio frequency emissions, and as long as the towers meet those emission guidelines, we can't do anything about radio frequency. And guess what? All the towers meet them because all the manufacturers manufacture their equipment to those guidelines. But people are concerned about that. A lot of people are concerned. There's nothing much we can do about it, but I do see those concerns in public comments and whatnot.
I don't know if you can help me with an answer to this. I'm trying to jog my memory banks. Believe that we did a study on RF with I think it was with the Department of Health.
Yep.
And I think it was under Commissioner Tierney, but I'm not sure.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, so it was.
Maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6 years ago.
Okay.
And there was a bill and there was a study.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember that. That was fun. And we got to the same place. There's federal preemption. Oh, okay. And that was kind of it. So I can talk about the bill now. I mean, if you'd like. I can
Yep.
Just give you my thoughts on the sunset.
Is everybody up to speed? No more questions for Greg on the process?
Happy to go back to that too if you have more questions. So the 3-year sunset creates some problems, as you can imagine, for us. It also creates problems for providers, but I'll let them make those arguments. I'm sure it creates uncertainty for them and their investments in the state. But from my level, as a state agency, and I'm starting to see this now, especially over the last month or so, we get every 3 years now, we get a huge uptick in applications being filed in anticipation of the sunset going away. It creates a huge workflow problem for me. I'm sure it creates problems at A&R, at the DPS, DHP, all the state agencies which are involved. So we would support getting rid of the sunset. There are no sunsets in other siting provisions, like under the renewable siting under 248. There's no sunset involved there. It does create a workflow problem. It also creates this sort of, people are afraid to make amendments to the bill. There are a lot of tweaks that could be made to the statute, but people are reluctant. I'm sure the providers are reluctant to come in. They don't want to upset the apple cart, knowing that there's this sunset that could happen at any time. It's going to happen in 3 years. It could be moved up. So they're reluctant to come in. We are reluctant to come in because we're like, well, that statute's going away in 3 years. Why would we spend time recommending amendments to that statute? It's going away. Why would we make rules? We don't even have formal rules on the statute because it's going away in 3 years. It takes 2 years to write a rule. So we're reluctant to devote, resources to that. So it creates uncertainty. I'm not sure what the benefits are, given that we've been doing this since 2007. You've had many chances to look back at it. You can change it tomorrow. You don't need to wait 3 years. You can change it next year. So we would recommend just getting rid of the sunset completely. The 3 year cycle it does create a lot of uncertainty, and I'm not sure it's very helpful. Anyway, that's my pitch on the 3 year. But otherwise, we support the continuance of 248A. But we'd rather just see the sunset removed completely.
Questions? Okay. Thanks, Craig.
You're
Oh,
welcome.
yep, sorry. Question?
If we're done on this topic, may I just ask what the notification from the consolidation? It's not on the agenda, but it is with Director Thompson.
Sure.
So just in terms of changing, the consolidated communications, their petition to discontinue legacy voice service, one of their petitions at the FCC. So they're required by law to notice federal law, notice the PUC, the governor, Secretary of War, Defense. And so I understand that they mailed a notice to you all, 130-page notice.
Yes, that is my understanding. Yeah.
Is that typical how you receive notices for that type of thing?
I don't think we get a lot of them, but
yeah,
they mailed it.
And I don't see it up on EPUC, or it didn't at the time.
Yeah, I wonder where that would go.
Well, that's my question.
We have it. I know we have it. I've checked with folks. Not sure we post that. I'm not sure if the department has it on their website either. I don't know.
I don't think that federal law requires the department to be notified. So just flagging for you that, I am worried about Vermonters just knowing. And since you are, the body that they're notifying with this 130-page notice.
I'll check when I get back to and ask.
Thinking problem solving here. How do we make sure Vermonters? Yeah.
Right. That would be a good place to put it on the website, at least. I'll check with the clerk and see.
Thanks, Chair.
Sure. I was just trying to think back. Well, we'll talk about this later. So I'll hold my question for later. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Ready? Here you are.
Hello, I am, for the record, Hunter Thompson, Director of Telecommunications and Connectivity with the Public Service Department. It's my understanding for this bit at least, we're going to talk about the 248 sunset and some general questions about our interactions with the service providers. So I have a bunch of wonderful notes that kind of keep me on track so I don't go too far off.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with, I think it's important to state that I don't think the primary goal of 248A is to increase the number of towers in the state. I think that at one point that was the goal. The goal is to increase the amount of coverage that we have in the state. And there's different mechanisms. There's co-location, there's new towers, and there's other possible ways to increase coverage. So I think back in 2007, the state of Vermont suffered from a severe lack of telecommunication infrastructure. That's now being remedied through 248A. And so 248A is specifically put out there to just increase the total number of towers that we see across the state of Vermont. It's a subtle difference, but I think there's a clear distinction there. I was asked to comment on some consumer complaint stuff in our general interactions that we have with the providers. So the most common complaint we receive around cellular technology is related to billing. These usually come in the form of folks having issues either getting a PIN required to port their number from one provider to another. So if you've ever switched cell phone providers, when you go in, you have to get a 4-digit PIN. Sometimes it's more difficult than others, and canceling service, because now that we are an online and electronic world, service cancellations often need to be provided online. I think back to an issue we had with an elderly woman who had problems doing that. She contacted us. We reached out to our contacts at the service provider. They called her. They got it all figured out, so she didn't have to go through the normal online process to get that done. The second most common complaint or issue that we hear of is a lack of service. Cell phone service. So I have an engineering background. I won't get into the weeds. Cell phone service is dependent on so many factors. These are often harder to pinpoint. In instances where we get a number of complaints from a specific service area, we're able to reach out to our wireless providers, and they will actually check their systems and equipment to confirm that things are working. Last fall, we received a number of issues from the Shelburne area, and we reached out to the provider. The provider went out and actually tested the antennas, which are the small antennas on top of telephone poles that are found on Route 7 that provide service. So we do have those relationships, and we're able to contact those providers in that regard. Other things that folks may know impact cell service. So personally, I'm on the edge of service. On a day like today, I might get a signal at my house, but in the middle of summer, when all the leaves are out, if it's rained within the past hour, there's no way I'm getting anything remotely close to where I live. So we have environmental factors that impact cell service, and we kind of address those as they come in and bring those up to people and say, it's not an all or nothing thing the way this works. As far as the kind of communications we have with the cellular companies, the department, with the outage notification, I was asked about that. The department is privy to the outage notifications that the 911 board requires of the cell providers. So anytime 100 customers are out of service for over 30 minutes, they're required by 911 commission to send a notification to the 911 board. We are included in that notification, so we get notifications when cell service is out within 30 minutes, like 911. We have escalation points that we can reach out to, as I said, when that becomes an issue. And our working relationship is largely good and a generic term, but good. We have good relationships with providers. We have technical contacts. We have contacts through their lobbyists. We have contacts through their government affairs people, where we can escalate stuff and we're able to address a lot of the issues. Before I move on to the 248A piece, anyone have any general questions about?
Do you get complaints from lack of service just because there are no towers?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not an uncommon complaint.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering what volume of complaints you get along those lines.
That one is smaller, quite honestly. The volume of complaints around the lack of service tend to be smaller than the volume of complaints around service issues.
Yeah.
And I think that's related to just people realizing they don't have service. Every once in a while we get someone who comes in and says, I can't use my cell phone at the house and I need to. And yeah, I understand. I can relate on a personal level to that issue.
I can't get service on Route 2 between here and St. Johnsbury, and
Right.
that's because there aren't any towers.
Right. Yes. There's actually a petition that we probably can't discuss because it's been a petition to get someone added in there. But yes, that's an issue. I often drive my son out to Marshfield on Fridays to see his father, and yeah, I can't use my cell phone from the store in Marshfield, and it's frustrating.
Okay. I don't imagine that public service department is in place for those complaints, but I wondered if you get.
So I think to move on to the 248A piece, I think one thing, and I think Mr. Faber mentioned it, is that 248A is not only cellular phone service providers, it's all telecommunication towers. Although cellular service seems to be the most common of the 248A petitions, as mentioned, all the communications like we call them B2B radio communications are used, and that would be the bus companies is a good example. One of my coworkers' sons drives for the bus company. They have what's called a business to business push to talk radio system that uses towers and antennas similar to its infrastructure so they can pick up their not a cell phone, but device, push the button and talk to the dispatcher directly wherever they happen to be.
Is that mobile radio?
Yeah. I want to address something that I don't have in my notes, but there was mention of the tower on top of Mount Mansfield. So when a tower like that has public safety infrastructure gets a petition, there needs to be explicit explicit permission from public safety before modification is made. So if public safety has something on top of that tower, then public safety needs to sign off on any potential change before providers allow to look and make it. So there are some guardrails around some of the larger infrastructure and places like that on top of Mount Mansfield, as opposed to maybe, I think T-Mobile has an antenna on top of the pavilion.
That reminds me about, I forget what the network of public safety. That around the country was what it was called, was it?
Oh, FirstNet.
FirstNet, yes. Are all those towers that were planned for Vermont now built?
I think there's one left. I think the rest that were planned for Vermont were built, as well as some additionals. So it's my understanding that the initial FirstNet push identified a number of locations where we would like to see towers built. All but one was built. A number of additional towers were built, and now we're currently working with AT&T and the FirstNet Authority to find some way to get some service in a general location. They had a couple setbacks and building a tower where they wanted it down there.
And the goal of the FirstNet was full coverage, right? So the first responders had.
Yeah, the goal of FirstNet was to provide a first responder network that offered preemption. So we saw that during the eclipse, right? So the FirstNet network would allow you to actually dial 911, as well as if you're a first responder who subscribes to FirstNet service, you would be able to use the network when the 150,000 people between Waterbury and Burlington in their cars were all trying to use their cell phones. You would get preemption, and you would be able to actually use a cell phone network regardless of the amount of congestion.
And that was FirstNet uses a separate part of the spectrum.
It's called, a separate band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the FirstNet towers, do they also have commercial cell phone service or?
Yes, oftentimes,
That'll
since AT&T got the contract with the federal government to offer FirstNet service, oftentimes you'll find that AT&T is the first to install commercial AT&T service on towers that were built specifically for FirstNet. But that doesn't preclude or prevent other providers from also co-locating on those structures.
All right.
So if you got 140,000 people trying to use a phone and that person gets preempted, how do you add capacity at different frequencies?
They degrade one of the other people using the service so that the first responder gets service. Or they disconnect someone's first responder gets service.
So all these services are within a particular bandwidth.
Yeah.
They're used up.
Number of bands.
So unless they expand bands, they're not going to expand coverage, expand number of participants that can participate.
Yeah.
Or the last on the end gets degraded service.
Yes.
May be able to use something, but may have difficulty.
Right. It's why if you were one of those multitudes of people who came up with the eclipse, you would always be on the comm line. But your streaming music might not be so pleasant as hearing that traffic jam. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
all right. So for the 248A piece, for historical context, the last time this renewal came up, we were asked to do a study at the Public Service Department related to 248A. That was in 2023. We had a online public survey. We did 6 listening sessions across the state, like Southwest, Southeast, Central West, Central East, Northwest, Northeast part. We had 2 additional online sessions where people could come and provide comments. We wrote up a legislative report and it was submitted, I think, early January 2024. Some of the big stuff we saw, some of the public themes around that was participation, encourage municipal participation, and then I guess health and safety would be a good way to put it. I think Mr. Faber has already mentioned that. I'm not a lawyer. I try to withdraw myself from conversations about RF radiation because we are federally preempted. I do know how ionizing radiation works from my engineering background. But as it is, that's something that we don't touch in the 248A process. I understand the concerns people have, but 248A is not the appropriate place. Well, you can voice them wherever you like, but I don't think you'll be able to get the appropriate outcome you'd like from that process. So I think some of the bigger things that we heard as it related to notification is the address in an IT system upgrade that we are undertaking at the Public Service Department to redo, I believe, EPUC and EPSD. And I think it will offer some better granularity there in terms of exactly what is submitted in the public comment, what is submitted as an intervener. So I think some of this is technology lag, that there have been changes to how people interact with this process online, and that the system we had just needs to be updated to better reflect those changes. Big municipal themes that we saw was a desire for clarity on the role of the municipalities in the process, and then some general requests from municipalities from another entity to help them craft town plans that will be given substantial deference within the 248A process. So one of the things that 248A does is it offers towns substantial deference based on their submitted comment, and the plan kind of needs to align with the substantial deference, as opposed to a town plan that was written 40 years ago that say we don't ever want to see any change that could potentially impact anything in our town. That's not necessarily given the same deference as a town like Shelburne, which has, I think, a 40 to 50 page section on telecommunication towers in their town plan with very specific guidelines on where, how, and when it can be sited. We reached out to all the utilities, we reached out to the CTIA, and the general response that we got from everybody was that they support the 248A process in general. They recognize this as a process that streamlines the siting and is an all-in-one place for this stuff to happen. The department's take on the 248A renewal is the department strongly supports renewing and is in favor of removal of the sunset. We share some of the same concerns as the PUC related to the 3-year sunset. I said this when I was here 3 years ago, the same thing, that 3 years is a short amount of time for something like this. There's lead time that are needed by the providers, there's rule change timeframes, and that while we understand the desire to have this consistent 3-year check-in to 3-year, we would love to see it eliminated personally. The 3 years is a short time frame. As Mr. Faber noted, I'll note that most of the petitions we review in telecom, and rest assured, we review every one of these petitions. Either I review it or my coworker reviews it, and we go through and we open up the multitudes of comments and PDFs and site plans. And we take out the calculator and we calculate if the actual panels are just big enough to be a de minimis, and we check the work of the providers and make sure that everything that they report is correct. We actually had one that submitted a structural analysis where we got back to them and said, your structural analysis said that this didn't pass. And I said, oh yeah, whoops, we're sorry, we're fixing it. We do review all these, but we find that most of these are de minimis applications. I think in 2025, about 85 to 90% were de minimis. And that the newer ones have definitely increased. I actually have some notes here where we have seen an increase of 174 total power requests in 2025.
How many? I'm sorry.
174. And I think we had 72 in 2024.
Hours? Or
Just 248A petitions in general. The total number of tower increase was 19 in 2025 versus 9 in 2020. Just kind of give you an idea.
Sorry, so there were 174 petitions in 2025. That's what you said.
Yeah.
And of those 19 were,
We're new tower, regular full petitions. And in 2024, 9 of those were full petitions. I think that speaks to the cadence that we see an increase in this workload every 3 years when there's uncertainty around whether or not it will be renewed. We've seen a near doubling of new tower petitions because of the uncertainty whether 248A will be extended or the sunset will be pushed out for the 3 years.
do you think it's attributable only to that, or do you think it's just more companies are wanting to put up more towers?
I think that in my 3 years here, I've seen it be cyclical. I've only seen one cycle, but others have claimed the same thing. Yep, every few years you're gonna get this because folks are scared that 248A won't be removed. The sunset won't be pushed out.
Sorry, Rep. Morrow had seen.
Is there any, encouragement to site towers in dead zones? Or is this like irrespective of where, of service issues?
I strongly encourage that. In fact, in the telecom plan, the last telecom plan we wrote, we had an engineering study which showed that 50% of the dead zones in the state could be filled by small sub 50-foot towers. I love to see fill like that. I love to see dead zones filled in with small infrastructure because it is less obtrusive and it allows those stretches of road. And when we talk about dead zones, we even talk about it as it applies to road miles. The stretches of road and the lack of ability for someone to call 911 in case there's a traffic accident. But yeah, it allows those stretches of road to have service in case that there's an emergency. Right?
But there's nothing in statute now.
There's nothing in statute that requires.
Differentiates.
Correct.
Between,
So I want to talk about something else.
Sorry, yep, Rep. Spillian, and I think Rep. Campbell.
Yep.
Oh, just to build off of the question from Representative Morrow, I believe Governor has proposed several times incentivizing power being built. Someone like me has been strongly opposed to that since this is really a market regulated sector. So, you know, companies go where there's profit to be made and don't go where there's not profit to be made. And they also receive a lot of public funds. And we can't really do much about it. So, you know, I appreciate the encouragement. And I also appreciate the encouragement and some of the work that the providers have done to fill some of those holes with smaller cells, et cetera. What I wanted to ask you was about if you could remind me if there is a report that comes to the legislature on any regular interval around the 248 permits, how many there are, where they are located, complaints that you may receive from Kathy on this.
So I'm unsure if Tappy files a complete report. In our annual telecom report, we include the total number of petitions that we processed, and whether they were de minimis, full, or limited size and scope. Those all come in. What's the other part for that?
It was just around, so it was, do we get a report about the number of petitions and that data, and then also complaints?
Yep. I will add that we also have publicly available products within the public service department that are on the website, which show a map of all the antennas or towers that we have approved or been approved for the CPD for the 248A process. We've been down a person, so it's falling behind. But there's a place you can go and actually type in an address, and it will show you the antenna location, the providers or the petitions related to the antenna. So you can drill down into the providers that are actually on the antenna, whether it be public safety, Verizon, AT&T, or one of these business to business services. And all that's out there. So that's all public information.
Mm-hmm. So I just wonder, with this recommendation to potentially get rid of the sunset, you know, what kind of prompt there may be for citizen legislators to, you know, conduct their oversight of a largely unregulated industry. And so this report comes to our committee. Sorry for not.
I believe you're including that. It's a legislative report. I believe it's sent to you as well.
Thank you.
This last conversation prompted I wonder whether it's possible to require developers of new towers to also provide service in one of the dead zones, or is that the kind of thing that's preempted by federal regulation?
I'm sure the answer to that. I apologize.
Do you know any answer to that question? Is requiring as a part of a permit to build a new tower, requiring that company, that project, whoever's developing that project, to also build a tower in a dead zone. Is that the kind of thing that's preempted by?
I don't know if it's preempted. I'm not sure it would work. They might say no thanks. We won't build either of those towers. You're gonna have the providers in later today. I understand. You can ask them that question.
I'm just trying to think of ways to get. So somebody dead zone, we're going to do. Mr. Thompson, 50% of the dead zones could be filled with towers less than 50 feet. That sounds like not a very expensive tower.
You should talk to them about that. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Just curious. Another question, but I forgot what it's. I'll think of it later.
Okay, Raquel?
Do each of the cellular carriers require their own antenna, or are there companies that use subsets, like build them a fiber optic cable out, sell off, lease off a section? They use the same antenna, so that you don't have to have 3 antennas on the top of every new tower.
So they can talk about it. It's my understanding that each cellular provider uses different bands, and the antennas that they install support the bands that they use. So each provider has their own antenna to support their own piece of the spectrum. That said, there are instances where providers will what's called drone with other folks. So I believe VTEL Wireless has a number of antennas in locations, and they have agreements with AT&T and T-Mobile to allow people to seamlessly use their infrastructure to extend the other networks.
Do you remember? Yeah.
Yes, it's about the 3-year sunset. If a 3-year sunset is too short, would it, but and so study has pointed out, having some oversight over this unregulated industry, at least not state regulated industry, seems like an important thing. Would a longer sunset be better, or even would removing, say, the de minimis applications from the sunset provision? With that, are there other ways of getting at this? Is what I'm trying to ask. Besides just either we have a sunset in 3 years, or we don't have a sunset at all.
Very possibly. I can repeat the department's position that we are in favor of removal of the sunset, but we are also not unreasonable people.
Presumably, we could make it 10 years instead of 3 years.
Something like that.
Something.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Victoria?
I just have a quick question about how this work is funded at the PUC. Is it from fees, or how do we pay for administrating this?
So this is myself and my coworker, and we are funded through, I believe, gross receipts.
Matt? And did cell providers get anything to take those receipts down? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have 2 seconds to get on my soapbox.
Yeah. I thought that isn't that why we invite everybody? That's the whole point.
Actually, I gave a overview of the telecom division to the rest of the department a few weeks ago, and I had a section entitled soapbox. The reason I took this job and the reason I stay with this job is I think that cellular service has moved to becoming really a necessity for economically disadvantaged populations and a basic utility at this point. We find that people who, I have some numbers back here, I'm not bothering about that. People who have a lower income and people who have less education consistently rely on cellular service as their primary access to the internet. And we've moved from brick and mortar, as we can see by the number of closed stores in Montpelier and the mall in Rutland getting torn down, to an online and a digital economy, right? And by not providing this service ubiquitously across the state, we're doing a disservice to these disadvantaged populations. A lot of times I hear people say, well, they can get fiber to the house, or to get fiber to your home, you first need to have $100 of disposable income to spend on fiber a month, and you need to have a home. And these are not the people that are most in need of the service. The people are most in need of the service are the people who don't have the ways and means to come out here and advocate for themselves, and to advocate for fashion and go out and buy a jacket and a tie and come in here and talk to you about how important it is that they be able to access stuff like Agency of Human Services, which primarily accessed online, Department of Labor Services, which are primarily accessed online, Addiction and Recovery Services, which are primary access online. These are the populations I think that we're really trying to help, but these are the populations that I think are helped by an expansion of service. And I really do see 248A as being a part of the ability to expand that service across the state of Vermont. I'll step down now.
Yeah.
And so let me step up onto the soapbox and say, when we have critical infrastructure and utilities, I also believe we need to be doing a better job of regulating that at the federal level where we are preempted now. So. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, but what can we work in the state to, what can state regulation do to to answer your soapbox question, to get more coverage, and provide cellular service as a utility?
So we at the department are in discussions with the providers on a regular cadence, regular interval. We have used our position and the products we offer, like the 248A tower map, as well as the biannual drive test, to actually bring some of this to the providers and say, hey, there needs to be service here. We know you have a plan loosely to add service in your location. Can it be extended? I think we accomplished that. I think St. Albans Bay Park will be covered fairly shortly with what was a lack of coverage in the Bay Park area. So we're able to use those relationships to kind of expand that. We're currently in talks with them right now about some additional information we might want to see and how that can work.
But this is only encouraging.
Yeah, this is only encouraged. This is not legislative.
We have no level. Is there? But here we are in the building that makes levers. What lever can we make? This is what I'm wondering.
Tori?
Oh, thanks. And follow up to that, is there a budgetary action we could take or something that we could fund that we in service?
I think we've requested money for the subsidized towers. I'm unsure if I requested it this year, given there's a lot of other financial stuff that the state is dealing with.
Yeah.
Sorry, you talk a little bit more about requesting funding for subsidized towers?
Yeah, in the past, it's been requested that we offer a granting program to municipalities who would like to go out with a RFP to ask providers to come in and site a tower, and then we help offset some of that construction cost, because as was pointed out, the tower might not necessarily be going in a profitable location, right? Like you look at a town, I continually go back to Roxbury, because I drive through Roxbury fairly regularly. It's a small town community. The amount of money it would cost to build a macro tower to cover the town of Roxbury would take an exorbitant amount of time to recover due to the small amount of potential customers. So we sought money to help offset that cost. It would be given to the town would do the process, and then they would help use it the same. We were 50-50 on the structure construction, something along those lines.
So public funds would be used to make a cell tower cheaper to build for a big national cell provider?
Yeah.
Interesting. I think what order were we in? Let's see, Powell's business?
So would expanding the cell service preempt the need to hardwire coaxial cable or fiber cable and get additional benefit of cell service covers everybody who drives through the area, not just the
No, I
can't
don't.
get it at your home?
I don't believe so. I think they're different technologies. They serve different functions. I think that wired fiber to the premises is still an important push. And I think it's still required.
Thank you.
So just want to reiterate, I don't know that there'll be a proposal this year, but I'm all for public funds for critical infrastructure. And I think you've done a really eloquent job explaining why this is so important, but with public funds, I think there needs to be robust public oversight. And I mean, it is a fact that the telecommunications companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year federally and in this building to prevent being regulated. And so those two things do not work for me together. So.
Graham?
The 50% of the dead zones that could be covered with 50-foot towers. Do you have a ballpark of how many towers that is?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I apologize. I believe that number is in the telecom plan. Or at least a rough estimation of it.
Thank you.
You may not know this, and maybe this is a question for the providers, but how does cellular providers make money on the tower?
That is definitely not a question.
Okay, because yeah, I guess that. I'll ask the providers.
When's your next drive around assessment of dead zones? Is that this year or next year?
It would be next year. We're just wrapping up and we are actually in the process of putting the newest maps online. Took a little longer as we have done a lot of reformatting to make sure that they're easily readable on a cell phone, on a computer, as well as on a tablet, as opposed to just a computer.
Can you read it on a cell phone that doesn't get coverage?
Yeah. No.
Can you notify us when those maps are live?
Absolutely.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Has any other state built one of those cool mobile mapping things that you guys did with your cluster of phones and all the software and stuff?
I think some other states have worked on it. We're pretty far ahead of everybody else as far as that goes. We've been reached out to by various states. I talked to I don't think it was called public safety, but public safety in Wyoming. They were wondering how we did what we did. We talked to Massachusetts municipalities. Massachusetts wanted to do similar projects, but I'm unaware of anyone else. Potentially, the FCC has what I consider a less robust data set out there, but
Yeah,
no, I haven't seen it anywhere else.
I want to commend you for pioneering that technology and that technique, and like it's so much better data than anyone else has. It's awesome. So thank you for doing that.
Appreciate that.
Is this a system we can, the department can sell for revenue?
Nope. This is for cell phones zip tied to some plexiglass with some backup batteries and some specialized software that we actually go out and get a state car and plan way ahead on how to duplicate the least amount of driving so we can cover the most amount of road miles in the city of Vermont. So, unfortunately, no.
Creative thinking.
I was thinking the same, but license it.
So
Sure, Helen?
your antennas are only the antennas that come with these four phones that are attached to the plexiglass.
Yeah, we look to duplicate consumers' end use experience as best as we can. And so we use commercial cell phones, drive around, and we honestly believe that the results we get are the same results that someone would get if they pull their cell phone out of their pocket in that location.
And does a cell phone signal increase if the antenna's stationary?
3 hours driving, so
Right,
I
so-
don't think
So you don't know if you stop in one place, you get a better.
I think it depends on whether we're moving towards the tower or farther away from the tower. So no, being stationary won't change the signal.
And so all you measure is that you got a signal, not that you have a quality communications.
Oh no, we actually make a test phone call to a number that we set up that can take 20 or 30 calls at a time, and we record whether or not the call concluded successfully, and we measure the upload and download speed of some test files to and from the phone. So we can actually, part of the map, we did our best to make it easily readable. It is none, bad, better, good. Yeah, so
Better.
yeah.
There's a seat in the far corner if you'd like to sit.
Oh, I'm good for right now. Thank you.
It sounds like something you should have in South.
All right, oh, I'm sorry, yep.
Getting back to the cost of the towers, I'm not sure you can answer the, you know, what the approximate cost is for install a 50-foot, the 50 foot tower.
I would not assume, I think that's a question better suited for the providers.
It's free if you just take the branch.
Okay, Hunters, oh, yeah, Rick Ford.
I have one more question. It might not be for you, it might be for Greg. Just because we were talking about decommissioning on the solar front, I was wondering how decommissioning costs would be included in tower reviews.
Look further, Greg, but I don't think that currently,
There's
not something that I see parking level, but if you see, I see something. Shaking his head.
No, there's no decommissioning on towers.
even in sensitive areas.
They're easier to take down than generating installations.
Hunter, thanks. We are gonna take a break and come back with you at 10:30 if that's okay, as the agenda says. But before we go off live, I wanted to just preview the testimony we've got coming up on this bill. So we're hearing from the wireless providers today at 1:00. And then tomorrow afternoon, we're hearing from Annette Smith from Vermonters for a Clean Environment. And then on Friday, I might try to move it a little bit earlier in the day. We're hearing from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And my question for the committee is, please let me know sooner than later if there's additional testimony you want to hear on this bill before we think about voting it out. Okay, so our proposal on the table is that we extend the sunset by another 3 years. And I just want to make sure we're hearing from everybody that folks want to hear from before I start thinking, you know, we've heard from everybody and let's have a committee discussion and see if we want to change the bill or what we want to do and vote it out. I don't think, I wasn't planning to keep it here in our committee for weeks and weeks and weeks. So this one's on the track. Okay? Okay, yeah.
There's some mention of the dates that aren't met and so forth. Do you think we should be revising those, that statute where the 30, 60, 180 days are mentioned? I mean, if
I don't have an opinion on that yet. I mean, we're going to hear, we're going to hear more testimony. You can ask folks what they think. I'm just sort of giving a heads up that like, if there are more people we think we need to hear from who aren't on the agenda, now's the time to let me know. We'll get them scheduled. And then after we've heard from all the people we want to hear from, we can start raising like, what about this? What about that? And raise that now. So that's on, on your mind, whether we should extend those.
I haven't got any comment from any constituent who said that something like 182 days, but more of the comments I get are they don't feel that they get to participate in the siting process, that they are removed from the process in one way or another.
So let me start. So questions. Same deadlines. Okay.
Just to add to that question, just the comparison with Act 250 in terms of
Online.
robust public participation, more capacity for it. I just might to get a little.
I'm trying to think of who can give us that.
I'm
Would
thinking,
it be an attorney?
well, it used to be, we used to hear from all.
I'm sure we'll get a lot of suggestions that
Yeah.
we've contemplated this.
Yeah, someone from.
And that should be a pretty simple chart.
Yeah, there's probably a report
Uh,
already on the environment
requirements,
committee. I should
side
go
by-
look for it.
Side by side,
Um,
yeah.
Can you reach out?
yeah,
Okay. Because I think from testimony we took yesterday, we're hearing that the criteria
for a full.
for full review lineup.
Mhm.
So the question is timeline, the robustness and thoroughness and ability of citizens to participate. And then I think we heard yesterday that some of the criteria were not allowed, are preempted federally, that we might want to weigh in on, but we can't. Okay, all right, we'll just keep the questions coming so I can make sure, I don't want to schedule it for a vote and then find out that people have a lot of questions that we didn't get answered. So this is just my advance, can we vote this out at the end of next week? I don't know.
So the other thing I'm wondering is about, it's somehow pulling out the de minimis process, from the question of the sunset. If 90% of the applications are de minimis, then, and there's sort of analogous to rooftop solar, for example, then let's just make that easy. And but maybe we have a continuing sunset on larger projects. I don't know how you would do that, but.
I don't know either. Okay, I made a note of that. So extend deadlines, question mark. How does this compare with Act 250 in terms of public participation, capacity to participate, notification, pull out de minimis, question mark? So if this is a big bulk of the applications and we see this big cyclical uptick that the department finds burdensome, and these applications really are, no big deal. Do we make that permanent and keep the regular legislative review only in place for limited scope and large? Okay.
Actually, this question might be able to be answered right now based and building off of Rep. Campbell's question. The de minimis applications, are they largely for fixed wireless as opposed to the cellular providers
What do you mean by fixed wireless?
like VTEL?
Oh, no, they're for the cellular. You're swapping out antennas.
Yeah.
So it's basically just maintenance.
Mostly, maintenance, but putting in newer equipment.
Keeping up with technology.
Right.
Yes, it's maintenance and, swapping out all for the antennas for 5G antennas, or maybe adding a new panel that can handle more concurrent users to increase capacity, stuff like that.
Thank you.
Okay. And then just air traffic control. I guess we'll see how this all works out, but I think the Senate, even as we speak, is taking testimony on a bill that would simply make the whole statute current. It would eliminate the sunset. So we do have multiple approaches crossing around. And the other thing I don't know is whether, if we vote this out, whether it goes straight to the floor or whether it goes to another committee for review. So I have some air traffic control things to figure out as well. That's another reason I don't want to keep this lingering around in our committee. I feel like there's a lot of different approaches and maybe different committees that need to take a look, and the Senate's got its idea going. And so I'm thinking we should try to focus our efforts on getting this out. Okay, why don't we take a 15-minute break? We can go off live and